New and potentially troubling developments for presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. The State Department says it cannot find a single relevant email on her personal server to or from Brian Pagliano. Now remember, he worked for the agency and also set up and managed her private computer server. And it was during her time as Secretary of State. That's according to court filings after the Republican National Committee sued the State Department for those records. Pagliano was offered immunity by the Justice Department in its continuing investigation into Clinton's server and emails and whether they violated national security laws. The lack of any official emails between the two raising questions now about whether those communications were scrubbed from both their accounts. This is a big deal. Julie, I'm going to come to you first. The Democrat on the couch, because you have said all along you have not been in favor of the way she has handled this.
Yes. I mean, I thought she's handled this horribly. There really was no excuse for a private email server. There was no excuse for her not to be using her State Department email. I will say, though, typically, this is, first of all, a lawsuit filed by the RNC, but typically, when the Justice Department starts investigating, all other civil lawsuits, I think, sort of take a back seat until the Justice Department is done with its recommendation. And so for me, I'm curious to see what Jim Comey, who's by no means a political hack or in the tank for anybody, he's the head of the FBI, if he recommends an indictment, Democrats should accept it. But if he doesn't recommend an indictment, I would hope that Republicans also understand that there was a thorough investigation. She's been cleared, and let's move on.
All right, let's talk about who this person is, Brian Pagliano. At one point, an intelligence source who was not authorized to speak on the record, so our Fox News reporting staff here has been able to talk with this source, who said Pagliano is a devastating witness in the FBI's case, in any investigation. So the fact that he was the guy who set this whole thing up.
Yeah, how do you go through a 4-year period, 30,000 emails, and yet have no correspondence between the person that set it up, the IT individual that sets it up, and Secretary Clinton at that time? I mean, it's just, the American people have to step back and say, it's virtually impossible. This is something that just cannot be real. Tell us something. Say there were 5, except for the one, happy birthday, Madam Secretary. That's the only one they found in 30,000 emails.
Right. You know, and you're absolutely right about this fact. How could it be possible? Actually, it wasn't. It just wasn't on the server that they're looking for, which sounds nearly impossible. So what do, Melissa? They went and they looked, they kind of triangulated, if you will. They looked at other people who would have been either CC'd or had access to those emails. And Joe, you're absolutely right. There was a trail there. It just mysteriously was not on her server.
There is literally no way to explain this that isn't breaking the law, because either he was on the federal payroll, but he wasn't doing any federal work at all. So he was getting money from the government and he was essentially in a fake job. That's the only way you could explain why there wouldn't be emails. Or they were scrubbed, they were deleted, and that's obstruction of justice and destruction of evidence. So there's no way to explain this away where people didn't break the law and know they were doing it.
Or, you know, they just didn't email each other, right? That's possible. No, that's ridiculous.
Email. That makes a lot of sense.
Right, which is why when you say, I hope conservatives can let it go if there's no indictment, I can't let something like this go. I can't. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and, you know, Julie, again, Pagliano, why he's so important is because he did the home system for her. He was the key IT guy. He was the webmaster, as they are called. So he would be able to tell the government in his now immunity-enhanced testimony now, because he's got immunity with the government, he would be able to say when, how, who, what, where, exactly how that system, who had access to it, and why.
And the only way immunity works, and luckily I don't know this firsthand, but my understanding is the only way immunity works is if you give up all the information they're looking for. So he may have those emails, whether the State Department finds them or not. He obviously has them and somewhere on his server, and the question is he going to turn them over to the FBI? He has to in order to get immunity. And what those emails show. But again, once that is all thoroughly vetted, and I believe it is going to be thoroughly vetted and is vetted by the FBI, let's wait for their recommendation before jumping to conclusions as to whether laws were actually broken enough to indict or not.
All right.
Broken enough. If laws were broken enough.
Part of the problem with this, where the public is concerned, Joe, has to do with the fact that people don't trust that justice will be carried out. You mentioned James Comey, the FBI director. He's already said he's personally looking at this. He wants people to know that this is a clean investigation, that sort of thing.
Right.
But, you know, let's just remember this moment back in March. Univision's Jorge Ramos asked Mrs. Clinton about this, and she said, you know, he said, if you get indicted, will you drop out of the presidential race? And she responded, my goodness, that's not going to happen. That's part of the problem with all of this. that she has not taken it to the point where people even think she's taking it seriously.
Well, she's not taking responsibility for what she did. And when you stop and think about the Secretary of State, and I was listening to President Obama one day, he said there's top secret and then there's top secret.
Right.
Well, how do you, something's top secret, it doesn't fall into two categories in my opinion. If I'm an American citizen and I'm thinking something is top secret, it doesn't have a B, or C classification to it. So he was talking about what might have been in those emails. I just think it was, and he called her careless. You know, President Obama called Secretary Clinton careless.
Which is not illegal.
It's not illegal, but do you really think about it? Do you want someone that is in the most powerful position in this country
to be that
carelessly
with,
taking care of things if it has to do with national security, or it has to do with their servers or emails? I mean, it gives us pause to stop and think about what's going to happen if.
Yeah, well, and she signed that document. Right? She signed that document saying that she understood the classifications and things were classified based on the content and not the markings. She signed the document that said she'd read the pages and that she got it. She understood it.
You know, I will say, though, she has taken responsibility to the point where she said she made a mistake setting up the email server. You can't expect her to say to Jorge Ramos or to anybody else, of course, I'm waiting to get indicted, and so if I get indicted, I'm going to drop out. Any politician, any strategist in the world would tell a politician, don't make a big deal out of this because you have an election to run.
Good luck.
So, you know,
we'll see how that works out.
Yeah.